If you are brand new to MLB The Show or you're trying to take a step up in your competitive level in ranked seasons, this is the video for you. Today, we're going to be talking about hitting tips, things that I do that have helped me throughout my way to get to World Series every single season in ranked seasons, as well as get flawless BR runs in MLB The Show 22. So before you load into a game, before you deal with any settings, the first thing you want to look at is what are you playing on? I personally play on Xbox, so that means I use a particular controller. I'll get to that in a minute. If you are using a TV, I highly recommend against that. I recommend using a monitor. Any monitor would work as long as it has a 1 millisecond response time and a high refresh rate of either 120 hertz or higher. The refresh rate is not necessarily a requirement, but you do want that 1 millisecond response time. If you're playing on a TV, there's a good chance it's going to be above that, and your responses may be delayed, which could lead you to either having late timing, or you think your PCI is in a particular location, but because of that delay, it's not getting to a spot where you actually want it. Also, in terms of size, this is mostly preference. I prefer to play on a bit of a smaller screen. The monitor that I use is 27 inches. That's kind of like a midway monitor. If you prefer to play on smaller, maybe you might go with a 24 inch. If you plan on going a little bit larger, you might want to play in like a 30 or a 32, but anything above that is a little bit excessive. Keep in mind that if the larger you go, the more you're going to be able to see, but that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be able to track the ball better. A lot of times, especially when it comes to tracking the ball, the smaller is the better option. So number 2 with your setup is you're going to want to look at your controller. Me personally, I am on Xbox. I use the PowerA enhanced controller. I've used the Microsoft Elite 2. I've used the base Xbox controller. The PowerA is the most responsive of any controller I have ever used. And when you are trying to get those precise PCI placements, especially when you're playing on difficulties like Hall of Fame and Legend, where that becomes more important, having that precision and that responsiveness, it is going to make your game completely different. The next thing with your setup is completely optional, but I personally recommend these. I use control freaks on my sticks. I use a high rise on my right stick for pitching pinpoint. I use the low rise on my left stick, so I have more surface area on the left stick so that I can control my PCI with a little bit more precision. Which control freak you use is completely up to you. Whatever you feel is best should be your option towards that control freak. However, I personally use the Galaxies. As with the controller, I will also put a link in the description of the control freaks that I use so that y'all can try that as well. So now that you have the ideal setup, what you're going to want to look at is your settings for hitting. When it comes to hitting view, I only recommend 2 hitting views in this game. I personally use Strike Zone. That's the one that I think is the best. However, if you also would like to use Strike Zone High, that might be a good option for you as well. Experiment between the two, see which one you play better with, which one you can see pitches better on, and rock with the one that you think is best for you. But I do recommend using only Strike Zone High or Strike Zone. Your hitting interface must be zone. If you're not using zone, none of these tips will help you. However, if you are using directional, I recommend against that entirely. Zone is going to be the best ability for you to make sure that you're making contact with all of the pitches that you're seeing, as well as being able to give you a little bit of control about where you can send the baseball on your timing, considering stuff like inside pitches, outside pitches, high pitches. If you play on directional, if your opponent is throwing things out just outside the zone, there's a pretty good chance that your player is going to whiff on that unless they have a very high vision rating. If you're using zone and you can get the PCI to the ball and the timing is decent enough, it doesn't matter what the vision would be. As long as that PCI is on it with decent timing, you will make contact with the ball. It might not be a hit, but there's at least the chance you could either foul it off or possibly get a bloop single. When it comes to the input type, I personally just use buttons. Some people use analog. I prefer buttons. I think it's simpler. I only use normal swings, either A button on Xbox or X button on PlayStation. Using power swings and contact swings, I don't think there's enough benefit to actually do those. Power swings make the PCI tinier, which gives you a little bit more of exit velo, and then the contact swing, it makes the PCI larger. However, the exit velo is not going to be as high, so you're mostly looking at singles. Normal swings, it keeps the PCI exactly how it should be. There's no weird modifiers that could be influencing your swing, and normal swings are honestly just the most consistent type of swing that you can take in this game. In this game, if you're trying to play at a competitive level, consistency is absolute key. When it comes to the PCI settings, this is honestly something that's personal preference. I'll tell you what I use, but ultimately use what works for you. I use PCI Center Diamonds with PCI Inner Starfighter with no PCI Outer. I think this is just something that works for me. It's large. I can understand where I'm sending the PCI when I track the ball, and I can run from there. Personally, I don't change the color of the PCI. This is not something that affects me. So if the PCI color does affect you, you can change it to whatever you'd like. However, I personally don't think it's that necessary. Similar to color, I don't really mess with the PCI transparency. A lot of people get distracted trying to move the PCI, which throws their timing off, which causes them to lower the transparency, which I think is ultimately a good idea. However, for me, 70%, that's just the default. Really, anywhere from 60 to 80% is kind of the ideal range in my mind. However, like I said, if you are the person that your timing gets messed up because you're focusing on that PCI on your screen, go ahead and lower that transparency and see if that does something for your timing. So this video is going to be completely recorded on All-Star difficulty. Most of the player base is going to be on All-Star difficulty, so this would mostly apply to those players. However, these tips do also work on Hall of Fame and Legend. So once you're loaded into the game and you have your settings correct, I always pause the game and see who my pitcher is. In this circumstance, I'm just playing the Rockies. Their pitcher is Jordan Sheffield. He has 4 pitches, 4-seam, slider, circle change, 2-seam. Like regular baseball, if you do not come up to the plate with an approach, you will not succeed. If you walk up to the plate and just say, I'm going to swing at whatever he throws me, you're not going to swing at the best pitches. You're not going to get the best contact. It might work here and there, but you're not going to have consistent success to your at-bats. So for me, when I pause the game and I look at his pitches, I also look at his velocities. So you can see his 4-seam and his 2-seam are both 96 miles an hour. In this game this year, the 2-seam is not that much different than the 4-seam movement-wise. So those pitches are going to look about the same, and the timing windows are going to be about the same as well. Similar with the slider and the circle change, both 88 miles an hour. Timing windows on those are going to be about the same. You would just have to be able to recognize, okay, if it's horizontal movement, it's going to be the slider. If it's vertical movement, it's going to be the circle change. On top of that, early on in your game, it is a great idea to look for tendencies of your opponent. If your opponent is throwing a high velocity guy, someone like Randy Johnson, Bobby Miller, if they are just throwing 102 mile an hour fastballs inside the entire game on the first pitch, sit on that fastball on that first pitch. You'll be able to recognize it maybe 3-4 batters into the game because people are going to repeat what works for them. Ultimately though, when it comes to an approach, it's best to be patient. Having patience in this game will not only get you better at bats, but will actually get you boosted stats depending on the player. Let me show you what I mean. So the player I'm using right now as an example is Andrew McCutchen from the collection. As you can see, he has very good hitting stats, but when it comes to high pitch counts, the most important factor is his clutch. Not only will this clutch rating boost your stats while there's runners on base, but it also allows you to have better hitting abilities while you're in high pitch counts. So for example, if you are in a 3-2 count and you're 18 pitches into an at-bat, there's a better chance you're going to get rewarded on a good PCI swing 18 pitches into an at-bat rather than swinging 0-0 at a ball maybe 3 inches outside of the zone. Another factor to consider when you're at the plate, look at the pitcher's energy and confidence. The lower both of these bars are, the better pitches you're going to receive. So, as you can see, it's at basically default when we just start a game. If I'm able to hit this pitcher around, that confidence level is going to lower, and there's a better chance that he's going to be hanging pitches, he's going to be throwing really poor strikes that you can hit very hard. Similar to the confidence when it comes to energy, the more tired your pitcher is, the more stuff he's probably going to hang, the lower his velocities are going to be, and the less control that he has. The best way to lower energy is take a lot of pitches. If each at-bat has an average of 6 pitches, by the end of the 3rd inning, you're going to have 54 pitches on your opponent's pitcher. That's enough to put him on pace to have 100 pitches by the 6th inning, and by that 5th inning, when he's at 80, 90 pitches, his energy is going to be low enough to where not only is he going to be hanging pitches, but he's not going to be able to throw super good strikes to try to get you out. Now, one thing to consider with this game is that unfortunately, off PCI home runs and hits do happen. Because of that, timing is going to be your most important key to be a successful hitter. Having a good PCI is important when it comes to good hitting. However, if the timing is not matched up with that good PCI, you might as well not have a good PCI at all. I'm not going to move my PCI on this pitch. I'm just going to show you what a good timing, maybe on PCI, maybe off PCI, depending what the CPU throws me, hit would look like with good timing. So as you can see from there, I'm just early on that swing. The PCI is off, and I ended up getting on base because of it, because the CPU made an error. So with just early timing, even though the ball was almost completely outside of the PCI, I was still able to get a very hard hit ground ball, which not only led to a bobble by the second baseman, but he ended up throwing the ball away, which allowed me to get on base. So not only do you have to worry about what your timing is, but of course, you want to get the PCI on the ball. I personally start my PCI a little bit lower because I notice when I play online, a lot of the pitches that I see are in the lower part of the zone. You could experiment about where you start your PCIs. However, I recommend not starting it in one of the corners, because when you're starting in one of the corners, you are more prone to slam the PCI to whichever part of the zone the ball might end up going to, because you may have to travel more distance to it. When I start my PCI at the bottom of the zone, I'm able to get to the high pitch very easily, especially to those with a lot of velocity. But if you are somebody who struggles to hit that high pitch, it is okay to start at the top of the zone or in the middle of the zone. That is something that you can experiment with to see what works best for you. Me personally, I work best at the bottom of the zone, but it may be different for you. So to be able to hit consistently, you have to be able to see the ball out of the hand. If you're trying to track the ball and you're trying to determine what pitch the ball is while the ball is in the air, you're already late, and there's a good chance that you're not going to make good contact on that swing. If you're seeing the ball out of the hand, not only is your timing going to be better, but your PCI placement will also be better. The way I'm able to see the ball out of the hand is that when the pitcher is on the mound and he comes set, I look anywhere between his nose and the logo on his hat. Whenever he begins his delivery and I see his arm now go above his shoulder, that's when I shift my focus to his hand. Like I said, if you're not seeing the ball out of the hand, you are not going to make a good swing. So let me show you an example of what that would look like. He comes set. Once that ball comes out of his hands, I'm able to see that it wasn't really a good pitch. I saw it had that horizontal movement to it. It was a slider, and I also saw it was dropping a little bit, and it ended up being a ball for a good take for a 2-1 count. So now you're ready to actually take a pitch. So for me, you could see in this at-bat, he's thrown 2 sliders outside of the zone. He's thrown 1 changeup in the zone. So he went slider, changeup, slider. I think he's going to go fastball here. He's yet to throw it. He's in a 2-1 count, which is a hitter's count. He's only thrown 1 strike, and it was a called strike. I didn't even swing at it. I think it's going to be a fastball, and like I said, this is where that approach matters. If you are unsure of which pitch is going to be coming next, sit best fastball and adjust to the next pitch if you see any sort of movement to it. Ultimately, in this position, though, I do think that he is going to throw a fastball. He's thrown 3 breaking balls. We're 3 pitches into the count. I could see a fastball coming here. That's what I'm going to be sitting on. I'm going to bring it all together here, and let's see if we can get a hit. So it is a fastball, and as you can see, I could quickly move the PCI over to there, and it ends up being a 2-run home run from Austin Riley. As you can see, that home run was not the best PCI. It was in the PCI entirely, however, it wasn't exactly in the middle. It did have a little bit of lift on it because it was in the top part of the PCI. However, at the end of the day, having that early side good on that swing allowed it to have a bit more exit velocity, came 99 miles an hour off the bat, and then allowed Austin Riley to go over the fence with that home run. I do want to make it very clear that I have played this game for a very long time. These tips may not work out immediately for you. However, if you sit down and you practice enough with them, I promise you that your competitive level will increase. The best way to practice these outside of playing in actual online games or against a CPU, if you go into custom practices, play on the difficulty that you play on most, and just focus on your timing, focus on PCI placements, find a pitcher that throws a diverse pitch mix with a batter that you like their swing, and take as many pitches as you can. Before I go into a World Series game or a game on Legend difficulty, I'm in custom practices for maybe 20-30 minutes, just making sure my timing is where it should be, making sure I'm not slamming PCIs, making sure my PCI placement is precise, and I'm not moving it too quickly. But again, like everything in life, the only way that you can get better is with practice. Like I said, if it doesn't work for you immediately, that's okay. Keep on it. You will get better with time. So that's going to be it for today's video. I hope I helped y'all a good bit with these tips. Be sure to like and comment on this video and subscribe to the channel for more tips and gameplay in MLB The Show 22. Also, be sure to follow on Twitch to catch all of our live streams. I'll put a link in the description to the channel so you could follow. Turn on notifications so you know when I post videos. Turn on notifications so you know when I go live. I appreciate y'all watching this video, and I promise you if you put these tips together, you will 100% be a better player.